We had an absolutely shocking development in the NBA streets. Very rarely do we see two teams who are both vying to be title contenders trade second best players, and that's what we saw this weekend with the Minnesota Timberwolves calling it quit on a franchise guy in Karl-Anthony Towns, sending him to the Bing Bong Boys of the New York Knicks while sending back Julius Randle and Spicy Ragu Dante DiVincenzo himself. But what we're going to do in this video is look at the fantasy implications. But before we do that, do us a favor to support the channel. Give it a like and a subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you know when we're dropping them bangers. And leave a comment. Let me know who you're most excited about because of this trade. So let's look at the New York Knicks first. I actually think this is going to help just about everything with the New York Knicks. My favorite thing about the big man Karl-Anthony Towns making his way over is how the offense is now going to be able to operate. So no matter how you feel about Karl-Anthony Towns, maybe yes, he's going to do some dumb fouls. Yes, he's going to say some corny stuff to the media, and he might disappear in the playoffs. But you want to know what? We're looking for fantasy points and fantasy points only. Karl-Anthony Towns being added to the New York Knicks not only plugs a hole for the Knicks by giving them a big man, but it helps stretch out the floor in the offense. You now are going to have Jalen Brunson weaving in and out of traffic, except you know what? There is no traffic because there's no Mitchell Robinson, no Isaiah Hartenstein, no Julius Randle clogging the paint. You can actually slide Karl-Anthony Towns out, and now you're able to put Mel Bridges in the corner, OG Anunoby in the corner, Josh Hart doing Josh Hart stuff. I've talked at length in previous videos about how I'm not super high on the New York Knicks from a fantasy perspective because it's all Jalen Brunson and it's all Julius Randle, except they've taken the Julius Randle aspect out of it. I think this makes Karl-Anthony Towns an incredibly intriguing big. For those of you who forget, Karl-Anthony Towns used to play basketball for Coach Thibodeau, and now he's reunited. Under Coach Tibbs, he was playing over 36 minutes per game, averaging over 20 points and sometimes over 12 rebounds a game. And I imagine we're going to see much of the same because he's only going to be competing with minutes for Mitchell Robinson when he's alive and healthy, and who? Sims. So Cat should have no problem staying on the court as long as he's not slapping people and getting into foul trouble. I also think this gives a nice boost to Mel Bridges, OG Anunoby because the offense is going to come so much more seamlessly with this type of space. I also think it gives a little bit of a boost to Deuce McBride, but I want to talk about Mel Bridges because I think we've been misreading what the New York Knicks might be doing here. Right, you have Jalen Brunson playing point guard, Deuce McBride playing backup point guard. But what if they have Mel Bridges run the second unit? And I know we all were burned by Mel last season after he kind of quiet quit on the Brooklyn Nets in all of our fantasy seasons after that game in November. And maybe we were duped 2 seasons ago where he got traded and then all of a sudden turned into a superstar. But if Mel Bridges is going to be out there with the first unit, knocking down threes, playing some good defense, getting some steals and blocks here and there, but then what if he's running the second unit? And if he's not running the second unit, we're taking out those Dante DiVincenzo minutes because he's no longer there. That means Deuce McBride might have a bigger role. So for the most part, whether it was SORARE NBA, your season long, your redrafts, or even underdog best ball, I was kind of ignoring the Knicks outside of Jalen Brunson, but baby, I'm back in. Now for the Minnesota Timberwolves, I don't know what's going on. I guess that makes me like Anthony Edwards a little bit more. However, if you think about the Minnesota offense, one of the big complaints we heard from Anthony Edwards himself last season was how the paint was getting clogged with Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. Well, now you're taking out Cat, who is someone who can actually stretch the floor, and you're bringing in Julius Randle, who 1, needs the ball, and 2, he does not stretch that floor. Ant-Man is one of those guys, if you have him, you play him. It doesn't really matter what the situation is. Anthony Edwards is out there. But I do wonder if the offense as a whole is kind of taking a step back here. I will say, I actually think this is a boost for Dante DiVincenzo. I know there were some mixed reports of, was Dante projected to start for the Knicks? Was he coming off the bench? I do think one of the things that Minnesota needed desperately was some consistent shooting, and I do think they get that with Dante DiVincenzo. So he might not start right away, but he's competing for minutes with guys like Mike Conley, Rob Dillingham. They lost Kyle Anderson. Maybe Jaden McDaniels loses a couple of minutes. Maybe Nickeil Alexander-Walker loses a couple of minutes, but Dante DiVincenzo is going to get his shots. And also, if we want to think long game, we should also take a second to talk a little bit about Naz Reid right now, who I actually think was a little overvalued heading into this season, but with the removal of Karl-Anthony Towns and with the tinfoil hat speculation that will Julius Randle even be on the Timberwolves come the second half of the season? Clearly, this was a salary dumping move. They did not want to pay Karl-Anthony Towns long term. Julius Randle is an expiring contract. We know he's probably not going to fit with the current roster construction of the Timberwolves, so if Julius Randle is plucked out throughout the second half of the season. That means Naz Reid has room to do Naz Reid stuff. It means more minutes for Dante DiVincenzo. It also kind of gives a boost to Jaden McDaniels. Now, I don't know if the Timberwolves are going to pay off as quickly as the Knicks pay off, but I do think second half of the season, when championships are on the line in the fantasy streets, some of those Minnesota players could really pay off. I thought we were going to have a chill weekend. I thought we were cruising right into media day, talking about how Kawhi's not ready, Devin Vassell's hurt, Mark Williams is hurt. Well, we're not talking about injuries today because all-stars are getting traded to contending teams, and it impacts our fantasy lineups. Let me know what fantasy player you're most excited attacking on either team, whether it's the New York Knicks or Minnesota Timberwolves. And if this is your first time checking out the Elite Fantasy Hoops content, thanks for being here. Smash the subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.